You've got a lot on your plate. Step family life can feel like an endless to-do list. It family is a lot, and step family life is even more sometimes. Everyone else's needs come first, and stepmoms often come last. So self-care can easily be something that we neglect. But what if I told you that self-care isn't selfish, it's survival? If you're struggling with this, you're not alone. 83% of women say that they feel happier after engaging in self-care just a few minutes a day, but 1 in 3 struggle. That's a lot. 1 in 3 is a lot. As a stepmom and as a stepmom coach, I have learned firsthand that self-care, it really can save marriages. It can save lives. So this is a really important video if you find yourself struggling to make time for your own self-care. You're in the right place right here, right now. I'd like to share 3 simple tips with you to carve out the time that you need for your own self-care. Without guilt, without shame, without waiting for permission. And there's a tip that might surprise you that can unlock the life that I know you deserve. So stick around to the end when I share that tip. And it changed everything for me. So let's get into it. You might have noticed that I am not at my desk or the kitchen. I'm in my camper van because I have carved out some time for myself. This is self-care, and I didn't want to miss a day of giving you a message, so I decided to do it from the camper van. And it's a great example of self-care. If either of these reasons has ever made it hard for you to make time for your own self-care, you're definitely not alone. We all can struggle with this. There are a lot of expectations put on anybody. And in the case of us, stepmoms, it can be hard to sort out what is ours to do in the step family and what is really the parents to do in the step family. We can often feel the pressure to always be available, whether it's for our partner or the stepkids or even the stepkids' biomom, right? We can sort of fall into the role of peacemaker, or because we might be one step removed enough to mediate. We could be the problem solver. We might be seeing things a bit more objectively, so we could offer advice or try to solve problems. We could see how we could put ourselves into a situation and maybe get something done, whereas for a parent it might have been harder. We could become the manager of the household. Maybe our partner isn't so good at that, or is too busy, so we write the chore list, or we decide who's going to do what, and we try to enforce all the rules or make the rules. And where does this leave you, right? With very little time for you. I know this all too well, for myself included. It is a path. Overcoming that is a path, and we're going to talk about it in this video. So, do you ever feel guilt? Like, hey, I am totally trapped in this guilt trap, in this I have to be a good stepmom or I'm going to feel guilty trap. Does that land for you? Does that sound familiar? Do you know what that feels like? Many stepmoms worry that taking time for ourselves, it'll make us seem disengaged, even, and get ready for this, even less like a woman. That's a lot of pressure. That's an awful lot of pressure. We can feel the pressure to prove our dedication, our maternal worth, right? We have to be endlessly available. And what does this lead to? well, I know you can imagine this. You may already be there. It can lead to burnout instead of balance. And, there's a third reason. Those were two reasons why it can be hard to make time for self-care. And there's a third reason that's super important to unpack. But first, let's look at how to become a stronger self-care stepmom, a stepmom of balance, the stepmom I know is in you. Let's look at that first, and then we'll go to that third reason. So there are two ways that I want to share with you first. One, and you do this every day, you've been doing it for other people. If you were to pay someone $1,000 to meet with you for an hour because they had so many answers for you and they were going to make your life better, and you had prepaid that $1,000, let's say, right? I know if I prepaid that $1,000, I would show up because it would be non-refundable, non-returnable, right? You'd have to show up and get every minute you paid for. I want you to treat it like that. Treat your own self-care like that. It's time to schedule your self-care on your calendar like you would an appointment, a medical appointment, an appointment with a client, to show up for your job, to get the kids to school on time, whatever it is that you're used to doing with scheduling. I want you to take the way that you make that so important, and you make it so important to be on time and to show up and to not miss it. I want you to transfer that over, share that commitment with yourself. What if you put yourself on your own calendar? Now, you may already be doing this. Okay, fine. Stick to it. This time, stick to it. Really stick to it. Make a plan. Block out time for yourself on your calendar, just like you would for work meetings or errands or taking care of other people. Treat it as non-negotiable. This is not negotiable. When you have a plan for your own self-care, for timing it strategically, that can make a big difference too. So when are you going to do the self-care? When are you going to put it on your calendar? Well, does 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Mondays make sense? Why? So this is game planning. This is what I do with stepmoms. This is what I did for myself. It's what has made all the difference. It's called game planning. And it is being very, very strategic about your self-care, anticipating when you're likely to be stressed. For example, do the kids get dropped off at your house at 6 o'clock on Tuesday nights? And it's always a stressful experience. Maybe the kids always need to focus on their parent. They ignore you. It feels awkward. You feel left out. Whatever it is, whatever the reason, you can pre-plan to be out of the house when that happens. Go for a walk. Do some self-care. Plan your self-care for that time. Be sitting in the bath. That used to be one of my go-tos. I'd be sitting in the bath when I knew there was going to be a stressful event. So you can schedule your self-care around the stressful moments. You don't have to be there. Or you could do self-care while you're there, but do it in a kind of covert way. And we'll talk about that. I call this kind of planning game planning because, in sports like football, let's say, or soccer or tennis with doubles, there's a team, and every player needs to know the moves that they're going to make so that the whole team can succeed. That's all you're doing. It's a way of being part of your stepfamily in a way that supports success. So the next way to make time for self-care is to stack it. So let's say this is doing the dishes. Well, stack wearing your AirPods and listening to a podcast. Let's say this is driving to work. Okay, this is listening to your favorite music and singing as loudly and freely and crazily as you want to. This is going grocery shopping And this is parking as far away as possible and walking around the parking lot 3 times. Whatever it is, however you can stack self-care onto something you're already doing is fabulous. I used to get up from the dinner table when the kids were totally immersed with their dad, and I wasn't anywhere on the planet in their radar system. So I learned to just get away from the table, just hold my energy kind of neutrally. Okay, I'm just getting up from the table now and I'm fading into the kitchen, and I would put on my headphones, didn't have AirPods back then, put on my headphones, and I would listen to music and I would do the dishes, which I actually really like to do. And that changed dinner for me. I would look forward to that. So you can stack your habits of self-care. Now, how would that be for you? How would that be for you? You know, when I started doing this, I was worried that they would think that I was being not maternal, right? Not maternal. But really what was happening was I was trying to force fit a reality onto them that just didn't exist. So it made more sense to figure out a way to be natural in that situation. Some stepmoms feel like if they do self-care and stack it with something or schedule it, that'll take time away from when they could be problem solving for the step family or doing things for the step family. And if that's showing up for you, then I think this next tip you'll find very interesting. So before I describe the third way, it's really important to understand a superpower. It's a superpower that we all have, every single one of us. And it really unlocks so much possibility for you to reduce your stress. Stepmoms often feel trapped in an all or nothing role. We either are fully stepping in or withdrawing. And all in what might be called the honeymoon stage, where everything just seems like, oh, if we just show up for everything, then we'll be able to make everything perfect. To then burning out and withdrawing completely. All right. That's usually when a stepmom comes to me for coaching. Some stepmoms come sooner. The key here is to find balance, is to intentionally flex. Get ready for it, drum roll. Identity. Believe it or not, that tends to be the pivot point here. Instead of defaulting to a caregiver identity, to a mom identity, right? A stepmom, we have the privilege. It's a remarkable luxury that some parents wish they had. We can consciously shift into other roles. Now, parents sometimes experience this when they empty nest, when the kids are really independent, they've moved on, the parent sort of has to figure out their new role. They're not as involved. Their level of authority is different. It's just different. And so they have to shift into a different role. Well, we're kind of like that earlier on. We get to shift into other roles. And one example would be a mentor or a support rather than a caregiver. Now, timing is everything here. What you can shift your role for different circumstances. Now, shifting our role often means shifting our identity, and this takes work. Our identity is how we navigate the world. It's how we make decisions. So, in my training in psychology, one of the facts that amazed me was how we can change our lives by changing how we think of ourselves. Because let's say, for example, I think of myself as a pro tennis player. I'm not. I'd love to be, but let's say I was. Let's say I was convinced I was a pro tennis player. do you think I might start buying tennis rackets and going and playing tennis every day and finding a coach, a really good coach, and saving my money up for the best equipment and for the best coaching lessons? Like, if I started to think of myself as a pro tennis player, I would start to line my life up like that. Well, you can do that too. When you can choose the role that's going to work for you in your step family, and you can start to make decisions that take you there. Being a self-care stepmom is part of your identity. When you start to think of yourself as a stepmom who takes care of herself as well as caring for others, it the habit stacking and scheduling time for yourself become easier to follow through on. This really does give you the flexibility to become your best self for the situation. You can assess each situation and you can decide in your step family, who am I showing up as right now? Who do I want to be showing up as right now? And by choosing when to step in and when to step out, you're really protecting your own well-being, and also with that comes your emotional stability and your stamina, which helps you offer a loving presence more consistently. It really helps your step family. So our identity, it really isn't fixed. It's a tool, and learning to wield it is really a superpower. There's a lot that you could dive into here if you go online. I'll be making more videos about this, about identity and how you're in control of it, especially when you work with your unconscious to surface the unconscious beliefs that you have that are driving how you think of yourself. Once you tap into those, you can really start to shape that identity, which shapes your life. Now, this brings me to the third way to make time for your own self-care. Remember, this is the one that I said really, really changed my life, and I've seen it change many lives. This is not going to sound that exotic to you, but given what I just told you about identity as the unlock for this, it might make more sense. The third way to make time for your own self-care is to set boundaries and say no. Set boundaries, say no. For some of us, that can feel kind of like pushing against something, or pushing people away, or being closed off. I want to offer you a reframe, because it's really all about the energy, the style with which you set a boundary and say no. If behind that boundary and the no is you being aware that it's actually you are making something possible by doing that, not impossible, but possible. You're saying yes to something else. Every no, if you think about it, is a yes to something else. And every yes is a no to something else. Like, if I say yes to everything, that means there's a lot I won't be able to do. I won't have the time or the energy. So a yes is also a no. And a no, saying a no to a bunch of stuff, actually means that there's all this extra time and energy for other things. So it can be a yes. Kind of trippy. So it's really about the energy. So learning to set a boundary and say no with the energy of yes. So what are you actually saying yes to? Yeah, well, here you go. Saying yes to protecting your time, to protecting the long-term success of your step family, to protecting the peace of your romantic relationship, so you're not always arguing about stressful things that you need boundaries around. You're saying yes to so many healthy things. You're actually being protective of yourself and everyone. So I invite you to try that on. To try, even if for one day You can be aware of when the opportunity arises to say yes or no to something, and say no with yes energy. Prioritize what truly matters to you. Let go of guilt about not doing everything. The guilt belongs to a different identity. Now, this is much easier when two things happen. Just two things. Our role is very unclear and uncertain, and it's not necessarily clear to anyone. So if your self-worth is coming from seeming like a mom to everyone and feeling like a mom to everyone, then saying no might be harder. The studies, my lived experience, my clients, the books, you can find it everywhere. Women who identify as mothers as part of their calling in life find it very challenging to live with children and not be like that. And when they can release from that identity, then the stress really does go down. Their health improves, their happiness improves, their relationships improve. So finding ways outside of your stepfamily to experience self-worth is really important, or to shift the role. Number two, okay, the other really easier way, it's within your control to set boundaries and say no, is that when we realize that stepfamily, it's just not something that's going to get fixed. It's just not. Stepfamily, built into it, there's a lot of complexity. The relationships are wonky. They're not clear between the step parents and the kids, the step parents and the bio mom, even the step parent, even you and your partner. When it comes to raising the kids, it's not a clear situation. It's complex, it's awkward, it's triggering. It can also be caring, it can also be fun, but no matter what, it's unclear what our roles are, and that's not going to get fixed. We got to just take charge where we can and let that idea of perfection go. And that's where setting boundaries and saying no gets a lot easier. So in my first stepmom gig, I really struggled with, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't even know I was a stepmom. It took years for a counselor to point out to me, you are a stepmom or stepmother. I think he called me a stepmother. And I was like, it seemed so foreign, so bizarre to me that he was saying that. I had 3 stepchildren, and one of them was full-time, 2 were part-time. I was doing everything. And nobody, no friends, the school counselor, nobody. I read parenting books. None of them mentioned step parenting. I had no idea. All right, so I didn't know that was my label. And when he told me that, it really did help me understand, oh, no wonder I can't figure this out. I've been looking at it like a parent. But all along I had been journaling, racking my brain for a role that made some kind of sense. I knew I wasn't mother. So I'd journal at night, I'd journal during the day, I'd journal everywhere, everything, napkins, paper, envelopes, it didn't matter. I was constantly trying to figure everything out. What's my role here? And what worked for me, I came up with a label that felt right. And what I want to encourage you to do is to come up with a label that feels right for you. Now, I came up with a label that felt right for most of the situations, and then another label that felt right for when I was driving my stepkids places. Then I was the chauffeur, and the rest of the time I was compassionate witness. Now, having those 2 labels really helped my brain make decisions better. It's like, oh, is this what a compassionate witness would do? Is this what a chauffeur would do? Is this what a compassionate witness would take personally or not take personally? Is this what a chauffeur would? So I'm not saying I was 100% better when I had these labels because I was already pretty tired. But I will say that having these labels gave me the emotional distance I needed to start to make decisions better for myself about my own self-care. All right. So now what roles make the most sense for you as a stepmom in what situations in your step family? What labels could you give yourself? Now, those are the methods. Now, how does this all fit together? Because there's a logic to this. Scheduling your self-care like an appointment, stacking your self-care with habits that you already have, those require setting boundaries, not only with other people, but with yourself. And, when you can catch yourself thinking about your step family during your self-care, that's a clue that that you haven't detached yet, and that's fine. It takes time to shift gears. Boy, does it take time to shift gears. We have a whole physiology in our bodies and our brains that once that stress reaches a certain level, it can be super hard to shift into self-care that's actually rejuvenating, because we're just sort of obsessing on the problems, right? Because we feel threatened, like we have to get them solved or we're going to die. Somebody's going to die. It can get that, we can feel that extreme. And I know it's totally understandable to think hard and long about your problems, to lose sleep, all of it, especially, and this is really important, when you feel powerless. So how do you make time for your self-care? Requires your claiming your power. And how do you make that time truly rejuvenating? Requires you to tap into your sense of power. That comes from, a lot of it, from identity flexing. So when the problems are less tangled up with who you think you're supposed to be, how things are supposed to be, what the situation at home says about you, when you free yourself up from all of that, you do become freer. Your mind gets freer. So it's an ongoing process of shaping your identity as a stepmom. And I can assure you that when you take the pressure off of yourself to solve your stepfamily, or to be some idealized image of a woman who lives with children. So, when you free yourself up from this idealized image of what a woman who lives with children does and says and feels and thinks and how she's seen, and that can be an unconscious image. It might be one of the reasons self-care has been challenging for you. It might not, but it's worth exploring. You will, and I assure you of this, I've seen it way too many times to not be confident. I'm very confident about this. You will get to know yourself as a stronger, more alive, more capable, more hopeful woman. And along with that, and this is really exciting, the chances of your romantic life with your partner, date night really being a date night, logistical conversations being a lot less stressful, right? Just easier. Your romantic life will improve. As long as your partner respects you and really wants you to also be happy and healthy, then you're going to find that when you say no with the energy of yes to your health and happiness and to the long-term success of your stepfamily, your partner is going to feel the rewards. They will. Over time, you both will become stronger. The connection with your stepkids, Those times when you really do have an opportunity to connect, even if it's for a couple of minutes, around a shared interest or something else, you will be showing up more fully, in a more relaxed way, in a way that is more natural for them, and able to give them the space that they need. And that connection can become stronger in those moments. So saying no means saying yes to those moments, being ready for those moments. Your stepfamily could improve. Your decisions around whether to stay or go could improve. Making time for your own self-care is really, really making time for your life to unfold in a healthy, happy way so that you can live to your fullest potential. If you want to dive deeper into this process, into making a plan for yourself so that you know when to do the self-care, what kind of self-care to do, how to get your brain and your physiology to calm down so that you can experience that rejuvenation, then I've got a game plan for you. And you can check the link down below and you can dive in deeper in the next video. I'll see you there. Hey, remember, you got this. You matter, and I'm here for you.